you remember the smell of a hot light bulb? That dusty, almost burning scent from a lamp that had been on for hours? Or the sharp, sudden snap of a filament breaking, plunging a room into darkness? For most of our lives, that warm yellow glow was simply delight, but that beautiful, everyday object was hiding a secret. It was a brilliant invention, and one of the most wasteful things mankind ever made. This isn't just a story about a light bulb. It's the story of how we went from brute force heat to pure, perfect light. Once upon a time, the warm yellow glow, warm yellow glow. For those of us who grew up in the 20th century, it wasn't just a light, it was the light. It was the light we read bedtime stories under. The light that families gathered around for dinner, casting a warm circle on the table. It lit up front porches on humid summer evenings, drawing moths and conversations in equal measure. And we all knew its personality, didn't we? We knew the frustration of walking into a dark room, flipping the switch, and being met with that hollow, empty click. And we just knew, that it would always be the bulb in the highest, most difficult to reach spot in a house that decided to go. For the better part of a century, this was our world. This simple, incredible invention was a backdrop to our entire lives. But this everyday miracle, this little glass bubble of sunshine we all took for granted, had a problem, a secret that was, by its very design, hiding in plain sight. Every day, the beautiful, flawed miracle. The secret was simple. The incandescent bulb was a marvel, but it was a clumsy one. It wasn't really a light bulb at all. It was a heater that just so happened to glow. Think about it. The whole idea was to push electricity through a tiny, delicate wire, the tungsten filament, until it got so incredibly hot that it would incandesce or glow, giving off light. And it worked, but it was wildly inefficient. About 90% of all the energy it consumed was wasted, pouring off into the room as heat. Only a tiny 10% actually became the light we wanted. It was, in essence, a tiny toaster hanging from the ceiling, a marvel of 19th century brute force, not 21st century elegance. And for decades, we just accepted this. We accepted the wasted energy, the high electricity bills, and the constant need to replace them. It was just the cost of light. But as the world changed, as we started to think more about energy and efficiency, this beautiful, flawed miracle suddenly looked, well, a little primitive. The problem was clear. We needed to stop heating a wire and find a smarter way to make light. And that's when things got a little weird. One day, the unlikely and unloved hero. Do you remember these? The pigtail bulbs? And then one day, after decades of the same familiar bulb, the solution to our energy problem arrived.
We can do this all night, or you can tell me where you hid it.
So we thought this was the compact fluorescent bulb, or CFL. And let's be honest, it was a tough relationship from the start. We were told it was better. It used a fraction of the energy and lasted so much longer. It was a responsible, logical choice. But we all remember that feeling of switching one on, especially in a cold bathroom on a winter morning. You flip the switch and nothing, just a dim, hesitant flicker. Then, over the next minute or two, it would slowly, painfully warm up, finally reaching its full, sterile, almost bluish-white light. It felt less like a warm invitation and more like an interrogation. It solved the energy problem, but it completely lost the emotional one. It took away the warmth, the instant comfort we'd known our whole lives. And on top of that, we had to live with that little warning on the box, the one that reminded us it contained mercury. And if one broke, we were supposed to open a window and evacuate the room. It was complicated. This wasn't the hero we were looking for. It was a messy, awkward, and unloved compromise. We'd fixed the waste, but we'd lost the magic. The search had to continue, not for a better version of the old way, but for something entirely new. Because of that, a quiet revolution. Because that unloved CFL bulb showed us that efficiency alone wasn't enough. The search quietly continued.
A new
but this
LED
time,
bulb glowing
engineers
with
weren't looking at
100%
glass
light,
vacuums or gases.
No 90% waste.
They were looking somewhere else
Edison's promise
entirely.
perfected.
They were looking at the tiny, blinking indicator lights on their computers and electronics. For years, tiny light emitting diodes, or LEDs, had existed, but they were small, weak, and only came in one color, usually red. They were good for telling you your VCR was on, but not much else. The challenge was to make one bright enough and white enough to light up a room. And that's where the revolution happened. This new kind of light wasn't filament being heated until it screamed. It wasn't a gas being excited in a tube. It was a chip, a tiny, solid-state semiconductor. The magic here is almost perfect. When you pass a tiny controlled amount of electricity through this chip, it releases photons, pure direct light. There's no heat as a byproduct. There's no waste, no warm-up time. It's not 90% heat and 10% light. It's almost 100% light. It was the promise that Edison had made a century earlier. Instant, reliable electric light, finally perfected. But to build this new miracle, you couldn't use the old factories. You couldn't use fire and glass. This new kind of light required a new kind of factory, one that looked more like a science lab. Because of that, the perfected craft. Because of that, the entire philosophy of manufacturing had to change. The old incandescent factory was a place of brute force. It was a place of fire and heat, melting glass, pulling wires, sealing bulbs in 1,600-degree flames. It was a 19th century art form, beautiful in its own raw, industrial way. The new LED factory is a 21st century clean room. It's a place of precision science. It doesn't start with glass. It starts with aluminum.
Last 20 years.
That solid, heavy base of an LED bulb isn't just for show. It's a heat sink, meticulously designed to pull every tiny bit of waste heat away from the chip to keep it stable. Then comes the heart of the light. Not a delicate, hand-strung filament, but a circuit board. Robotic arms, moving faster than the eye can see, place hundreds of these microscopic LED chips, smaller than a grain of rice, onto a board with perfect precision. It's a process of assembly, not creation. And finally, the brain. Tucked inside that base is a sophisticated driver, a mini computer that manages the electricity, protecting the chip and giving it that steady, unwavering light. The entire process is the opposite of the old way. It's not about resisting heat. It's about managing it. It's not about creating a vacuum. It's about assembling components. This wasn't just a new bulb. It was a new world of technology, and it would do more than just light up our living rooms. Until finally, the world we live in now. Until finally, that little chip has done something its creators probably never even dreamed of. It hasn't just replaced the bulb in our kitchen lamp. It is the lamp. It is the television. It is the world we live in now. Think about it. That bulb in your kitchen, it will likely last 20 years. You may move out of the house before you ever have to change it. The headlights on your car, they aren't hot glass bulbs anymore. They're bright, precise LED arrays that cut through the darkness, making driving safer than it has ever been. And the screen you are watching this on right now, whether the giant TV or the phone in your hand, that's not a light behind a screen. That is a screen. It's millions of microscopic LEDs, all working together to create a perfect image. This technology didn't just improve the light bulb. It became our light. It's in our cities, our homes, our pockets. The hero of our story didn't just solve the problem of a hot, wasteful bulb. It went on to illuminate our entire digital world, all while saving, as the experts estimate, over $200 billion a year in energy costs globally. It's a revolution that happened so quickly and so completely that most of us barely even noticed. The emotional takeaway, more than just a bulb. When you look back on it, this whole journey is really about so much more than just a light bulb. It's a perfect, tangible story about us, about our incredible, relentless human drive to see a problem and not stop until we find an elegant solution. We started with a brute force miracle. We captured lightning in a bottle, a glowing hot wire that was beautiful and magical, but deeply flawed. We knew it was wasteful, but it was the best we had. Then we tried to fix it. We created that unloved hero, the CFL, which solved the logic of the problem but completely missed the emotion. Our hearts told us it wasn't the real answer. So we kept tinkering, kept dreaming, kept pushing. We went from a factory of fire and glass to a clean room of silicon and science. It's the story of how, over a century of trial and error, we finally learned how to separate the heat from the light. We traded a technology that was 90% waste for one that is almost 100% purpose.
And when we finally reached the riverbank,
that's a story that's bigger than just technology. It's a lesson in our own potential. The conclusion, lighting the future. From that first fragile filament glowing for 40 hours in Edison's lab, to a microscopic chip that can shine for tens of thousands of hours. The mission has always been the same. It's the mission to safely, reliably, and efficiently light up the dark. The incandescent bulb gave us our first taste of that artificial glow, changing human life forever. The LED, a century later, has finally perfected that promise. It's a beautiful arc of history, and it's a story that every single one of us has lived through. We saw the old world of heat and waste give way to the new world of efficiency and light. And it all started with that simple, universal human desire to flip a switch and say, "Let there be light." But this is also your story. I would love to hear your memories of this journey. What do you remember most about those old incandescent bulbs? Do you have a story about a CFL driving you crazy? And what was the first LED light that truly amazed you? Share your story in the comments below. We all live this history, and those memories are worth sharing.